Aloha, my name is Michael Q. Ceballos. I am one of the founders of CAFF, the Cultural Animation Film Festival, and the owner of Twiddle Productions. Thank you for joining us for this panel for our festival. It is called Animation Empowerment, and we have assembled incredible talents from all walks of the animation industry, and they're here to share some important stories and their experience. So I'd like to start this off by asking each of our panelists to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about what they do and what projects they're working on right now.
Like at the same time, all of us?
Everybody at once. Let's start with Rob. Yes, sir.
I'm Robert Hughes. That's Robert F. Hughes. It has an F in it now, so that so I don't get confused with all the other Robert Hugheses on the web. I am currently I'm working on a show called Crapopolis. It's a primetime show. I'm working with Sue. We haven't aired yet, but we already got our third season pickup.
Oh.
I am a retakes director on this show, which is the guy who tells everybody how to sweep everything into a pile and get it ready to be on the air. Should I tell my history?
Yeah.
Like,
well, you could highlight history. Highlight your history.
Highlighted history. I didn't go to school for animation. I went to school for other things and eventually found myself in animation. I started as a cell painter back when we used to have cells. And then I kind of worked my way forward to animator. And I've done every job, assisted camera back when we had cameras. And eventually found myself directing for Nickelodeon, which was games animation at the time, on a show called Rocko's Modern Life. And I was at Nickelodeon for most of the 90s, where Carol and I worked on Rocko together. That's where Carol and I met. And Michael, you and I met on Angry Beavers.
Yeah.
But I was also freelancing because, and Keith, I didn't forget you, Keith, on Angry Beavers. When you have a full-time job, we were also freelancing certain things because people would say, "Can you help?" Or I had to pay rent or something. And at the same time, I was working for Sue, who was the animation supervisor on, I think it was Squirrel Boy. Was Squirrel Boy our first one?
Billy and Mandy.
Billy and Mandy.
Mandy first.
So I was in the 90s, I was all over Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon, and eventually Family Guy. And in the 2000s, I worked at Disney mostly on Phineas and Ferb. And then, and now I'm working in prime time with Sue on Crapopolis.
Nice.
How's that for abbreviated? 35 years of abbreviation.
It's good. It's good. Well, since we mentioned Sue so many times, Sue, why don't you take over?
Yeah, no pressure. I'm Sue PERROTTO, and as Rob said, I'm currently working on Crapopolis as a retake animator. So now he's my boss. So we swap around every so often, and that happens all the time. So that's kind of fun, and my career's kind of come full circle. I started out when I went to school in live action to become a live action cinematographer, and not to disparage the live action community, but those people were not for me. Animation people were my people. And so I was a TA in the animation area, took a class, and I was just stuck. I mean, I was done. So I started out as an animator in New York City and worked on everything from Beavis and Butthead to Daria, you name it there, and then moved out here to LA and worked on Winnie the Pooh, which was quite a culture shock. Wow. Going from Beavis and Butthead to Winnie the Pooh. And Disney, going from the MTV Society to Disney. So that was, and New York to LA, anyway. And then I was supposed to be out here for 6 months, and 20 years later, it's the longest 6 months of my life. So here I am.
Nice. Well, Keith, why don't you pop in next?
Oh, okay. Well, my name is Keith Kaczorek. That's K-A-C as in cat, Z as in zebra, O-R-E-K. If you want to check out my IMDb page. I came to animation via live action TV comedy. I worked for MTV, Fox, and various people writing sketches and other things. I freelanced for MTV. I did, in fact, a Beavis and Butthead episode that never was produced because they were afraid of it. Which is, I take that as a badge of honor. I worked for Disney TV Animation, Warner Brothers, Nickelodeon, Nicktoons, of course, Jim Henson. My crowning achievement was to develop and then run the writing on Angry Beavers, which is where I met Michael and Rob Hughes. And that we went for 5 seasons. And from there, I did some more freelancing after that. I'm currently collaborating with Michael on a couple projects at Twiddle and also pitching shows out in Los Angeles. And as I said before, you can see my produced credits on IMDb. You can see the spelling of my name, I think, on your screen. And that's about it.
Great, thank you. And Carol?
Yes. So I started out similar to Rob. Well, first, I'm on Rick and Morty. I'm the color supervisor on Rick and Morty. I've been on it since the pilot. And except I have done different jobs on the show, but the color supervisor on this show particularly is you supervise all the paint. So backgrounds, characters, props, effects, everything. So it's a lot. It's very similar to art directing, except I don't want to be an art director on that show because it's too insane. But I started out, it's way too insane. And I started out 35 years ago also, and I started painting cells. I fell into it. I went to Otis Parsons for graphic design and illustration. And I was making a living doing that when I graduated. I wasn't even looking for work, but a friend said, hey, we need to paint cells on this Deke show. And so I jumped on, and that's kind of how I started. But I've done every job in animation. So I started designing, painting, developing. I've assistant art directed. I've art directed. I've directed. I've assistant directed. I've edited. I've literally done every job. But my favorite job, which is what I do now, is color or development, art direction. Although I'm a little bit tired of art direction now at this point. It's very stressful. But I've worked. I started out on The Simpsons at the very beginning at Klasky Chupo. I was on the first 4 seasons, and I started out as a designer, and then they put me in charge of color. And so I learned from these incredible directors, and I learned everything on that job. That's where I learned how to animate. That's where I learned just everything I know. And I went on to do the Rugrats pilot, Duckman pilot, Edith Ann, and then I moved on to work at Cartoon Network, every studio except DreamWorks pretty much. And I worked on Over the Garden Wall. I've worked on the Powerpuff Girl movie. I've worked at, and now I'm on Rick and Morty. So I've been everywhere, but that's kind of my experience.
Nice. Were you there during Duckman season 2?
No, I was only on the pilot.
Oh, okay.
And Everett Peck was my teacher in college. So
I see.
it was great to work with him after he was like my mentor. And then, yeah.
He's a good man. What's really cool about, all of our backgrounds is, we at one point or that we've been there from the very beginning of a project, and in that development phase or that pitching phase. And I know that, especially with the festival, we have an incredible group of animators every year, and everybody has a certain spark of excitement and ideas that they want to, what do I do? Where do I start? And storytelling, whether I want to make this animation or a film. And do you guys have any suggestions of what they can do when somebody has that idea that they just have to tell? Anybody can jump in for that one.
Well, my big thing is just always say yes. You come up to somebody and they're like, well, we can do this, but we want to change it. Okay. Just say yes. Do you know how to animate? Yes. Even if you don't. And this is the guy who hires people.
So is
One of
that, is that the fake it till you make it philosophy?
That is exactly it.
Yeah.
Because, well, the truth will out. I mean, if you're an artist, it'll show and it'll pay off. If you say no, it's over right then,
Mhm.
you know.
But don't be afraid to ask questions too. If you don't know something, faking it is one thing, and it's important to get your foot in the door that way. But if you don't know something, ask.
Yeah,
There
it's
are people that have done it before and are really happy. That's how I learned half the stuff I learned. It's
Yeah.
just asking. Don't be afraid to not know something.
That's
Yeah.
really a good point, because in the interview, at the end of the interview, if they say, do you have any questions? Have some questions.
Yeah.
Because that's what they're looking, a lot of people are looking for in the interview is how involved is this person?
I really appreciate that because I've interviewed about 5 people in the last week and only
Huh.
one of them asked questions, and it made me crazy. It
Did they get the job?
yes.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, also too, I think, also take advantage of any time there's a professional around, like just having this opportunity and having people have access to ask questions. And, I think it's a really great idea that, whenever there's somebody who has that experience, ask them, take advantage of that, because you may not know when that's going to happen again.
Mhm.
Keith, from the writing perspective and developing and storytelling, what's a good place to kick this off?
Wow.
I hear you right.
Well, contrary to what Rob said, you know how many writers it takes to change a light bulb, right? Why do you want to change it? So I think the thing with that, but I think to Rob's point, the thing is to be willing to be flexible with the idea, any idea that you have.
Mhm.
And then also to do some homework and to think about, especially if you're pitching, what kind of shows do these people do? What's their agenda? I mean, you can have great ideas and that becomes a nice portfolio piece or, something that you send around. But if you're actually looking for somebody to hire you or to buy something from you, well, then it better be their brand. It better be within their wheelhouse. And as someone famously said, it's show business, not show art. And, the business side drives things. That's where the money comes from. That's how you get shows on the air. That's how you get movies done. And so to think in terms of things that are the same but different, as somebody once said, it's like if you go to the movies, you're going to see same stories over and over again. If you go to watch television, you're going to see certain formats and genres that are repeated. Find your little tweak on that. Find your little your brilliant little change that you make to that. You're not going to, anytime I've gone in and talked to an executive where they said, like, this is what we do here at Disney, but I'm going to change things, I know the meeting's over. You don't fight City Hall. You kind of find a way to like take what they do and do well and work within that system.
Another way too, and I agree with you, because especially, things have changed so much, right? But before there was just the main 4 big places to go to, and now there's such so many places, festivals and even independent art and animation. Creating your own stories is also important too. But if you want to try to get into those areas, it's good. This is all good advice. Yeah. And speaking of working within that system, we've all worked with incredible teams. We've worked with teams that were kind of odd, and we've had incredible bosses and we've had not so incredible bosses, right? Can you guys talk about the importance of collaborating as a creative team, musicians, voice actors, and when that all comes together and works really well?
Collaboration.
Any thoughts on that? No? Okay.
No, I'm not gonna answer that. No.
Well, back to my earlier point, you write something that's really good and then watch everybody wreck it.
Make it better, Keith.
No, but yeah, seriously. I mean, if you're lucky, if you're fortunate, everyone along the way pluses things.
Yeah.
You start from the script, and then from that point on, the voice actors, the board artists, all of the artists involved, everyone along the way adds something to it, you know. And if, like I say, if you're lucky, it keeps getting plussed and plussed and plussed, and it's much, you know, it's much better than what you ever really conceived of in the first place as a writer. And the amazing thing of the animation process, I think, as opposed to live action, is just how important all those people along the way are in making it come off, and how bad it can go if one of them doesn't. So so the teamwork aspect is, you know, because there's nothing live in animation except for the voices, right? I mean, the acting and all that stuff that you get in live action from a performer and from the sets and all of that, that's all up to the animators. That's all up to the people doing the artwork and the production work. So if you get lucky, and I think we did on Angry Beavers, everybody along the way just kind of like put their extra little bit in there. And you know, someplace where there weren't gags, Rob Hughes would find them. And you know, someplace where the characters needed this or that, and Michael would come up with something, you know, some really brilliant design, and you go like, yeah, that's it. That's what I was thinking of, and no clue. So anyway, those
That's
are
the cool thing I found, is that you work with such amazing artists on every level, amazing writers, you know, color artists, background, and everybody has their own voice, their own style, something to bring to it. And the best crews are when everybody kind of puts their own take on it, and then you get this amazing thing that nobody else would have thought of, because you have everybody's sensibilities, everybody's outside influences, and everybody's a great artist. You know, it's really fun when it works out like that. It's awesome.
That's what I was going to comment on too, is like, because I just recently talked to someone about how The Simpsons started out as the shorts, and it was on the Tracy Ullman Show, and it had a look that was just, you know, Wes Archer, and it was very crude and Matt Groening style. And then as we built the series and it got bigger and bigger really fast, we had to turn it into something that you could put in a pipeline. So it gradually changed. And then within like the first few episodes, it kind of started hitting its style. So it really changes a lot because of all the people that come in and how good they are, all the directors that we had, all the designers, the color artists, the painters, everybody. So it changed completely. And it kind of takes on its own thing and becomes its own show. So it starts out as one thing, which was Matt Groening's idea, and then it became its own show, and now it's just a thing.
The Simpsons is the benchmark for most of the shows that came after it. There was a certain way they did things. They started using an overseas studio.
And we didn't know what we were doing.
I think it was Korea right off the bat.
It was Korea.
And what's his name? Came up with animation timing, which is basically a frame by frame accounting of whatever you want everything to happen on the storyboard. How it, you know, the storyboard artist draws somebody opening a door, the timer has to draw them. We want them to walk up to the door this fast, grab the doorknob this way, open the door this way. And
we did layouts too, though. We actually had.
Yeah, well, we timed from layouts originally. I remember that. Yeah, they on Critic, we had them do the layouts, and then they'd send them back, and we'd time to their layouts, and we'd open the box. It smelled like cigarettes. But all the other shows used this timing, this system, and we all did it the same on other shows. Chuck and Pete brought it over to Rocco, and we did it on Rocco that way. And then that was the standard on Nickelodeon.
Is that how it progressed from there?
Yeah. When I got to Disney, the X sheets, I actually made the column bigger so that we could discuss more of the action column, so that we could make it clear to the animation studio. I'm sorry, I'm off the topic here. But
because X sheets is voodoo. I look at those things and it like gives me a headache.
Well, that's one of the nice things about being a timer is
gotta know it.
Nobody bugs you because nobody knows what you're doing.
No, nobody knows. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely the biggest enigma of animation.
But it's kind of I think it's kind of a dying part of animation in some respects. But what happens is when a show starts, everybody comes from somewhere else. Some people are coming in from school, some people are coming in from other productions. And that first season is a thunderstorm.
Yeah.
People are stepping on each other's feet, people are
Yeah.
getting fired, people are getting yelling at each other and stuff like that. Beginning of second season, if the show is any kind of a success, everybody takes credit for it in the second season. And then by third season, you are working as a crew. It is a team effort, it's a group effort, nobody does everything. And everybody needs support, and you got to be nice to everybody because you're going to be working for them someday.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if
Or
you're the kind of person that, you know, picks on the people below you, you're never going to get another job because they're going to be the producer on the next thing.
And that's so true, because you know, at Nickelodeon, a lot of production assistants and they went on to produce and are, you know, in charge of a lot of things, you know. So that's part of being a good team member, is don't be a jerk. Be
Yeah.
nice, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
actually have a sign on my desk that says that. Sometimes I just turn it over and just.
But yeah,
mean-
it's like it's we're talking about evolving, right? Things have evolved,
Mhm.
and that's actually part of the next question, because you know, even when I first started out, you know, paper and pen, you know, my animation disc. I still use my animation disc because if I'm not burning the hell out of my finger, my drawing isn't good. You know what I mean? Just from drawing. But in terms of yeah, there, see, yeah.
Dude,
but now
I'm telling
things
you.
are, yeah, now things are, you know, they go digital. I mean, with Beavers, you know, we started off with cell paintings, and I think second season it turned into the ink and paint system, the US system. But
Yes, animation.
yeah, that's right. But can you talk a little bit about, you know, your experience of the pros and cons of traditional techniques versus digital, and you know, where the good things are, the bad things, what you miss?
On
And
Phineas, Sue and I, Phineas made the transition over to digital storyboarding when Sue and I were directing on Phineas. And I think we qualify as beta testers for Storyboard Pro.
oh, Storyboard Pro, yeah.
Throughout the years,
This was like
I've
2000.
had to learn a new
Expensive.
something for every job. A new version of Storyboard Pro, Harmony. I found a resume, and it's like Cubase Score and just Lotus 1, 2, 3, like these programs. I'm laughing. Imagine working on that. The new thing now, the big thing that everybody's using now is Harmony, and Harmony is amazingly complicated.
Yeah.
But it allows you to do things, you know, in front of people. You don't send it off to Korea and hope for the best in a month. You can literally do it right there. So,
And hope for the best in a couple of days.
right. But the problem is, there's a lot of cheats. There's a lot of, you know, just manipulating stuff just by turning it or instead of drawing it. Sue and I had this discussion the other day where somebody is showing us how to, if you go into the node and you move this around, then, you know, that thing will, and Sue and I are both like, why don't you just redraw it? You know, instead of sit there and fiddle with the nodes and the, anyway. But no matter what you're learning, what program you're good at, you'll have to learn a new one. But the fundamentals are still there. The Disney fundamentals of animation still apply, regardless of what you're using, what system you're using.
So this is a question for the floor. How long before AI replaces all of us?
Next week, somebody said it really well. Animation is the art of imperfection. When
Yeah.
something works really well, it's because it's not perfect. And, you know, when computer animation first started, it was all about splines and, you know, making these really cool, you know, spinny, you know, metal spinny things, you know, and everybody was like, ooh, this is so cool. And
the
I remember
pyramid, the
this is gonna-
floating pyramid.
yep. And this is going to date me, but I remember going into SIGGRAPH in Boston when I was still in school. And Brad Bird was talking, and he was talking to a bunch of these budding computer animators. And this was like way before everything. It was when he was doing Family Dog for Spielberg.
Mhm.
And he was showing them the bouncing ball and how you do a bouncing ball and squash and stretch. And these guys, you could see everybody's brain was just broken. They're like, oh my God, it's not just this straight thing that goes evenly and perfectly. It's, you know, and it's about timing. And one of my mentors was saying, you know, animation is this and this. It's all what it is. It's all about the juxtaposition and the contrast between the two lines. And the timing of it, as Rob was saying, you know, is paramount to it. And I don't care, you know, maybe, I don't know, I hope the machines don't get upset with me, but I hope, you know, I don't think right now the machines can do that because it's a human. It's that tactile thing that the hand brings to it. And I would like, you know, using computers as a tool. Computers are excellent tools to do something, but you still have to have the heart and the experience and the knowledge of the basics before you do that. I mean, but as an aging animator, you also have to be adaptable as well. You have to be able to learn Storyboard Pro. You have to be able to learn Harmony. You have to be able to go through. I mean, I worked in stop motion for a while, and I worked on Celebrity Deathmatch doing stop motion animation. And before we would have, you know, just the plain camera, and you'd have to wait and cross your fingers and hope that something worked. And we ended up animating in Premiere, of all things, and using these surveillance cameras that were color, and using these things called lunchboxes so that you can actually see where you were going. And you just adapted, you made it work. And you kind of have to keep doing that. I mean, I didn't intend to learn Harmony, but I did. And now I'm back to animating again. So, you know, I'm going off at the mouth, but that's it.
So I would love to chime in because I do a different part of the animation process, but there is a big difference between the way computers are now with paint and color and art direction than it used to be on paper. And you do need to be able to do both. You need to know what you're doing. I hire a lot of painters who only work digitally and they don't understand the animation process. Because I'm an animator, I can teach them. So I have taught my crew, you know, on Rick and Morty, but a lot of people don't know. They come out of Art Center or other schools and they're amazing painters. But as far as AI goes and then computers, you still need the traditional way of thinking, which is what is the emotion that we're conveying? Because everything comes to us in black and white. So even, you know, what Keith was saying about how we're all adding on top of each other. So you've got the boards, then you got the designs, then it comes to color. And when it gets to us, it's all black and white. There's no lighting, there's no emotion yet, nothing. It's like, that's what we're putting in there. So AI is not going to be able to do that like we do it. They will be able to handle probably the technical parts, but not, we have to actually think and figure out where the lighting is and what's happening in that scene and where people are talking, what's scary over here, or is there a birthday party over here, or what is this thing that's going to come out of the ground? Like you have to think because you're reading the script and the storyboard, you got to know what's going to be next. So I'm not too worried, but in terms of like knowing both, it's good to be a traditional painter and know how to paint, because even when we're doing things digitally, being able to change things quickly is the name of the game. So you got to know how to fix things and you got to know how to do it by instinct. So you're not wasting time like, oh, I forgot how to paint a landscape. You know, you have to know. So
and that's the difference between using things as a tool, no matter what type of program it is, and you having the talent and knowledge to do it even without the tool. You know, you gotta, if the tool, if this controls you, it's going to look weird. But if you control the tool, then that's where you can make it better, you know.
I would say that we are talking about television production, basically television production, feature production. Independent film is different. Sue's working on an independent film now. And there's a million other things you can do in animation that don't necessarily have to follow the way we do it in television animation. So there's a question about portfolio. What is the best thing to put in the portfolio? And it used to be for animation, figure drawing.
Mhm.
That's still
Um,
important.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I haven't really had that.
I like to see if people can paint. When I'm looking at portfolios, if it's not traditional on paper, at least that they've painted some landscapes and some basic things where they know foreground, middle ground, background.
Mhm.
Mhm.
You can see that right away. Even if it's flat and graphic, you can see if they know how to do depth. And that's like, it's just the basics,
Yeah.
basic painting. You've got to see it first.
Yeah. Even just basic anatomy is very simple. Unless your character is supposed to have his arm coming out of his ear, then that's cool. But
But I
if you
think
think that's where it belongs,
It's
I don't know.
important to put in something that's got a little style that shows
Yeah.
what
Right.
makes
Shows
you
what you
unique.
do,
Right.
Exactly.
what your take is, and then you got to learn the rules to break the rules.
There you go.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. Thank you
I
for
think-
saying, Carol. That's
think
true.
the
That's
thing-
so true.
I think the thing with figure drawing was to prove that you could work with other people and produce the same look.
Mhm.
Which obviously is very important because
Yeah.
on Rocco, Carol, we had 4 different directing teams, and each episode looked different from the other. It was like
Yeah.
chaos.
You have to design, and then it comes to our department, and we have to make. I have right
And-
now. I have 21 people in my department, and we have to
Whoa.
make it all look like one show. So, and we've got people all over the
And
country.
it's a crazy show.
It's a crazy,
Rick and Morty, forget it.
but we do it. We make it look
Oh man.
like one person did it.
That comes back to a change I think that happened in the 90s when we were starting at Nickelodeon, and I'm completely new to animation. I went to NYU dramatic writing. I ran the equipment room for filmmakers, things like that. What was back in the day, Disney, Warner Brothers, the big players had departments.
Yeah.
And their stuff all came out looking the same because it got put through that sausage maker of a machine. And then when you got to when Nicktoons started and we were in all these weird, funky little offices all over the valley, we were that one season on Angry Beavers, we were above the X-ray tech school, and we were all worried we're going to become sterile.
Remember that?
But and before that, the studio was created. But even if you look at the way the shows were,
Yeah.
every show had its own paint department. Every show had its own layouts, its own BGs, its own character designs and props and all of that. So for every show, you were like reinventing the wheel, as opposed to the way the bigger factory system worked at the older studios at Hanna-Barbera and all those places. Where you knew a Hanna-Barbera show because they all looked like a Hanna-Barbera show, and because it was that design department and art direction and all that were had that continuity to it. And now it's like every time you start a show, it's like, well, can we get a color person? Can we get some board artists? It's just like throwing together a whole assembly line from scratch.
Well, that's why it's important. It goes back to working as a team, because when you do a show, it has to look like it's all one cohesive piece, right?
Yeah.
But as a independent animator or an artist, you also want to show your style, because if you can have your own personal style and then also work within a style, that makes you even stronger as an animator, as a designer, as a painter. So that's really important, and yeah, so that and being able to move around is really important. And when we first started, things have changed so much, as we talked about the technology, but even now with diversity in animation, before the stories were very, very generic, and now we're seeing a lot of incredible stories. That for us at the festival, we see so many incredible cultural stories, telling stories that are so important to not just the individual animator, but their culture at large. Can you guys talk a little bit, or have you seen a change also to be more inclusive with stories and people as well?
Not on Rick and Morty, but on some other shows, maybe. I mean, I won't say our show, but yeah, I am seeing changes happening, and also just and diverse hiring too. Our like my department is really diverse, and that's kind of a goal nowadays. Like I know on Solar Opposites it's the same. There are a ton of women on that show, all different cultures, but yeah, I am noticing more stories being told from different points of view, from women's points of view as well. But
Right.
it's a slow change.
Yeah, the thing is, the independent films, that they get a lot of attention. And then when it comes to production, the studios all just want to remake the Flintstones.
It's a slow.
Yeah, so we're kind of at a point here where production is making the decisions instead of the artists.
Yeah.
It's like we want to make a Pac-Man TV show, and all the artists say, why? So they try to plug diversity into it, and it seems it might seem pandering. So it's like it needs to come from the independent film, the sincerity of the independent film.
Yeah.
Move that
I
forward
agree.
into production. You can't just paste stuff onto.
Right.
Well, it was sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I was lucky enough to work on a Disney show called Mira, Royal Detective. And
Me too.
yes. And what was nice was that we really tried learned about the East Indian culture and South Asian culture. And it was wonderful. We had a dance in every show. We worked with a Bollywood choreographer. We were really trying to be true and authentic to the culture and make it accessible to everyone. And that was one of the, it was a short-lived show, but we really did try to do our best without being pandering, just making it was what it was. We tried to make it accessible and interesting. I mean, I learned so much. I got to go to India and meet people and really learn about their culture and be immersed in it. And I think Disney is trying to do that more and more, and not just do it because it's fashionable, doing it because it's right. And it was one of the most amazing things, having parents come up to me and saying, oh my gosh, I wish I had this when I was a kid, when I could actually look on television and see someone that looked like me, that had holidays and family interactions that looked just like us. And as an Italian person, it was interesting to meet these people and say, oh, wait, I have that same kind of aunt. I have that same, there are similarities between cultures that was really cool as well. So it's celebrating the differences, but also the similarities, which I think is really important at this point. And now, Keith, please, I'm sorry to have interrupted you.
Oh, no. I have nothing anywhere near that interesting to say. Well, I was going back to a point that Rob made earlier on, where, the art side of things. When I was at NYU, every year they had the annual Student Film Festival. And the most interesting part of it was always the animation, because they were all one man or one woman bands. They had been working for 2-3 years to get a minute or two.
That's where I went. I went to NYU, to School of the Arts Animation.
Where? What years?
He's talking about your
online,
film,
and this is being recorded, man.
Okay. No, anyway, I mean, I managed the equipment room when we were in the East Building, and then managed the move over to 721 Broadway.
I was in 721 Broadway.
Yeah, but in the East Building, it was one little room. I'm trying to remember the man's name. He did this wonderful sort of collage animation of butterflies. Yeah, he did the butterflies and the watercolor things. Yeah, they were just really, the wings would transform and all that. And then, like I say, it would be a minute long, or maybe 2 minutes, or somebody, the old Bolex on the.
I loaded those Bolexes many times.
Did you have a doorknob, or did you have the actual winding key?
We had the winding ones.
Yeah, but when you lost the winding key, you put a doorknob on it.
Well, we actually jerry-rigged motors so that it worked for us. It was
okay. And there was we had a rotoscope.
Yep.
Yeah. They're talking about film, kids.
Yeah. Actual like cameras and stuff, and old movie-ola and
wow.
Yeah.
But you lost me for a second too. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, well, we painted on cave walls when I went to college.
That's it. We did this with a lamp. And yeah, exactly.
I did want to bring up, there is, I mean, it is changing a little bit. I mean, Jorge Gutierrez is some amazing cultural stuff from his own culture, and he's really bringing that to the forefront,
sure.
doing really well
Yeah.
with it. So
Oh, yeah.
I think people like that are really kind of pushing it, and
Yeah.
we need more.
I would say one of the advantages that people have now is that they can get their stuff in front of people. All you have to do is put it
Yes.
up.
True.
You gather a following. It could be short, phatic little one-offs. TikTok, has proven that that's possible. I don't know what I think the current favorite format for that is. I'm not really sure. But
Yeah, you don't
you
have
get
to
a
send
following, and the executives will listen to you.
and you don't have to send a print around
Right.
and wait for it to come
Right.
back.
It's a link. Right.
All you have to be is consistent.
The one answer print that you can afford, and then you send that to all the festivals one at a time. That's like, you don't need to do that anymore.
No, you do not.
No.
On the
you know-
other hand, people can run off with your idea.
That's true. That's true.
That's why it's important
That's
to have your
something
own
to keep your eye
voice.
on.
Yeah. I want to hit on what Sue said, because I say that all the time. For a lot of the work we do here is since I left California, we're doing a lot of cultural based films. We've done Chamorro, we've done Hawaiian, we're doing Olelo Hawaii films, which is Hawaiian language. And the thing that you're absolutely correct in is young kids who see something that looks like them, sounds like them, and is in their own backyard is very empowering, because it's not just something that, oh, it's a pink dragon, it's a unicorn. It's like, oh no, that's me. And that's very powerful. We found
there you go.
empowerment that we see, and it's actually growing, which is very exciting. Disney has been doing a wonderful job with Coco, and starting with Moana and Kanto, and it's only getting better. I recall a couple of times, actually, Keith and I went to go pitch something at one of the studios, and they said, put more magic into it. It needs to be more like this. And then we never went back, because that turned into something else. One person actually told me at another person, when we were doing some stuff, he said, let me show you some things. And we liked it. And I said, well, what if we were able to do something like this? Would there be interest? They said, well, who would want to see that? And that was before we started seeing this renaissance of new cultural based stories. So I think that there's hope, and I think that it's growing, whether I don't want to say whether people want it or not, whether people expect it or not. It's coming, and it's here.
It's happening. I mean,
It's
I know,
happening.
yeah, it's happening. I know it's criticizing my show, which I actually really love my show, but we are really cognizant of having, every race, every type of person in the episodes, and all
Well,
of
it's like
no one notices, but in all the crowds, all the main characters, all that, we vary it quite a bit. So
whenever you work on a show, you're always putting little personal stuff into it. Everybody is. Little hidden things like that. And when it resonates on the internet, you meet somebody else from Michigan who's like, I know what you're talking about. It's like, yeah. So that's always great. I mean, if you can look at a cartoon and see something, in that cartoon, and it appeals to you, it's a hit.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I know we have one more topic before we open it up to discussion, and this is about breaking in. We do have a lot of great animators who are joining us. Some are students, some are animators, but and we talked about portfolios, but in regards to advice to animators breaking in, how could they be prepared? How can they prepare? Like I always tell people, learn how to do an invoice, basic things like that.
That's one of the things art school's kind of missing out on is
Yeah.
how to take care of yourself, how to put money away, how to all that stuff. But
can I say that I slept with Rob Hughes?
you can.
Is that allowable? No. That's how I got into the business.
Nice.
Sleep with Rob Hughes.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
it.
And I mean, just sleep. We were just,
We were exhausted.
Yeah, we just slept.
But aside from taking naps, how can we give advice to young animators,
I
and
have some.
students.
You know what,
Student, okay.
Yes.
what I would say is you've got my sympathy. You're sitting on huge student loans and you have to have a job,
Yeah.
but it's not, it doesn't really happen all at once for most people. You pick up something here, you pick up something there, and you keep rolling. You're drawing on the web while you're working at, you know, Starbucks or whatever. But if it's in you, keep going forward, and it'll happen eventually.
And networking, you know, I can't minimize how I got most of my jobs from friends that I went to NYU with to start out with. That's how I got my first TV writing job at MTV. That's how I got I was a script reader for a while for a video company. And you know, you talk about the people that you meet when you're working and stuff like that, but the people you meet before you work, that, you know, half of the people who go to film school or mass comm programs and things like that don't necessarily want to be directly involved in production. But they show up as executives, they show up as agents, they show up in places where, you know, it's very much a business of relationships, in that you're working together intensely, long hours, all this kind of stuff. It's a lot more comfortable to hire somebody that you know that is, I don't know, you can work with them. It's not somebody who brings in a great portfolio and then two days later you discover they're absolutely, you know, bats in the belfry, and you can't work with them. It's like, oh, this is great work, but you know, he's smearing his lunch on the walls.
You just described animators, man. What the heck?
Everybody.
What's our slogan, Sue?
Make it gooder.
Make it gooder. No, it's we're all here because we're not all there.
Oh, that one.
Animation. I'm gonna make a t-shirt that says that.
I think it's really important, exactly what Keith said, but also if you aren't in film school and you don't have those connections, and I've had people do this a lot with me and other people I know, get in touch with people that you look up to anyway. And a lot of students are really afraid to reach out to us, to professionals, and some people just do it. They've got the balls, they do it. And when they do, and they're really talented, we're going to help them out. We're all very supportive of each other.
Yep.
We all want to give everyone a chance, and it is worth it to put yourself out there and talk to people. I tell people, like, find who's your idol, call them or email them and see if they'll have coffee with you. And 9 times out of 10 they will. And that always shocks students when I'm telling them that, but we are all in this together and we all do this with each other. And we want to meet the next, you know, generation of talent, because we might want to hire them, or we may be working for you someday.
Right.
So it's a big fishbowl, and you want to get in the fishbowl.
And go to the conferences and go to the cons.
Go
and
and stay in touch. Yeah. And always stay in touch, and then show people what you do too. Like what is your take on things? And then I always call references. I just really make sure you give people good references, because I love the work, but like what Keith was saying, are you crazy? Like, you have to work with our crew, and you have to go fast. So are you going to fit in, and are you going to be a good asset to the crew?
Well, I'm glad you weren't my boss, Carol. What the heck?
Well,
Never would have got a job.
And the thing is, animation, it's a big pool, but it's also a really small world.
Yes.
You know, I remember working in New York and coming out here for a visit with a friend of mine, and people knew who I was, and it freaked me out, because they're like, "Oh yeah, we know you. You did this," and I'm like,
Your
okay,
reputation
you know,
precedes you.
I know. And then on the flip side of it, be really honest about what you've done. I remember working at a studio, and a guy came in with a portfolio, and he showed some animation, and it was my animation.
Oh yeah.
I've had that happen too.
I've had that happen. I've
Yeah.
had that.
Had that happen.
And it's like, you know, if you've been, if I saw, oh no, oh yeah, and they
Oh
thought
yeah.
they're gonna get away with it, and I'm like, yeah, that's really nice, but I did that 3 years ago,
Yeah.
and
So-
don't, you know, it's really small, and a lot of the best people that I work with are referrals from friends of mine. If somebody comes in for an interview, I will look them up and talk to people that have worked with them before. Because as Carol said, this is a crazy business. We're going really fast. We're
Yeah.
creating something out of nothing, literally nothing. We're creating worlds that don't exist, characters that don't exist. You have to be willing, you have to be able to work with people and really flexible. Sometimes you have to be change on a dime. Sometimes, as Rob will know, they will change things that you've done 3 or 4 times and you have to just do it
That
Yeah.
just happens.
without hesitating. It's like, oh, okay, it's a lot of problem solving.
Well, when they do that, I do turn my mic off for a little bit.
There is that reaction time that's behind the scenes, and then you come
Yes.
back and you're like,
Anyway,
sure.
anyway, so.
There's a lot of swearing on mute, but
Yeah.
oh, I have in my office, I have a speed bag. Like I'll sign back into the meeting and the speed bag's back there going like this. I'm like, I wonder if anybody notices.
oh,
There are a lot of revisions.
Yeah.
Many revisions.
Executive notes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you can't take it personally.
Yeah,
If you might have worked, I mean, just had it happen. I worked on a scene, you put overtime in to get something done and they cut it.
Yeah.
And you can't take it personally. It's not because,
And
you
I-
know,
Or
it was
sometimes-
wrong. It just didn't work as a whole.
Or
I told
sometimes
Oh.
sometimes it doesn't even make any sense. As
Oh,
when
yeah.
when we're doing Angry Beavers, an executive was going over, I think, our first batch of scripts, and the executive said to us, "Well, I don't think a beaver would say that," and I had to lean across the table and go, "Beavers don't talk."
Here's,
And
here's what a beaver would say.
but you get these notes, and you have to take them with like a grain of salt and a kind of thing of like, I kind of see where you're coming from, but do you
One of
realize what you just
You
said?
could have,
Yeah.
One of the notes I got on Phineas was the title sequence. And it said, well, you can't have Candace say that they're making a title sequence because kids don't know what that is. And I'm like, they will the next time they watch it. You know?
and that's
Although
when the eyelet was born.
my first response was, well, my kids would know. Yours. Mm.
I do love working with writers though that are like, so yeah, I mean, we're lucky, probably you are too, Rob. We work with people who, when they do make the changes, they actually are better. And
Yeah.
it does come down to the big picture though, and that is part of my job, and I'm sure some of you as well, where even some of my painters are like, oh my gosh, why are we changing this? It doesn't look as good as what I just did. And I'm like, you got to see the whole 400 scenes that we have. It's one piece of the puzzle, and everybody's pieces have to come together, and it has to look good. So
this is going back to your points of like calling on references and things like that. There is that other aspect of, do they work well with others? Do they take notes? Nothing more frustrating than giving notes to a writer when you're the head writer, going like, all right, I've been doing this show, this is the voice, this is the way, change this, and it comes back and that it's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And you do this a couple of times with that person.
that happens every day.
Yeah. But if there's a chance to not work with that person again, you will not work with that person again.
I know who you're talking about, Keith. I know exactly who you're talking about.
I worked on a show once in Cartoon Network, and they there was one board artist, and he took things so personally. We'd have to lock up the room and hide the Post-its on the notes that we put on his board because he took it so personally and got so upset. I was just like, oh my gosh, it's just he took it like a personal affront, and you can't do that.
I know who this is.
Huh?
I think I know who you're
I
talking
know that
about.
person?
I might.
Well,
You probably do. I know you worked there. In fact, you might have been, okay. Yeah, I think you might
No,
have.
I think I do.
See, this
Yeah.
is all proof positive of how small the world is, right? It's like,
Yeah.
Rob goes, I know exactly who you're talking about. It's like, no, it's not anybody's
No,
name.
I'm sorry, go ahead, bro.
Every time I go into a new job, it's like, oh, hey, I haven't seen you since, 4 jobs ago.
Yeah.
And I'm like, one of these days I'm going to walk in and I'll already be there. I'll just be like, uh-oh, it happened.
It's like those old mobster movies where they all knew each other from prison.
Right. Well,
But you're best friends when you're on a show and you celebrate each other's birthday and you give each other presents and you don't see them for 7 years and then you're friends again.
Yeah, and actually, I was gonna hit on that, and we're about to do Q&A, but as you guys can tell, you know, we've either known each other or have been acquaintances for many years, and that's, you've heard it mentioned, the animation community is small, and it's small, but it's important. It's a family, right? For myself, from the Angry Beaver team, you know, what, going on 25, 30 years now, we still hang out, we still talk, and the importance of having that core team is that continues is really important. So you got to find the people that are good for you, because they'll help you survive it. And I'm going to say this, I mentioned this a lot, but during the pandemic, Rob started to make these Friday night happy.
Drinky Zooms.
Drinky Zooms, there you go. I didn't want to say
Well,
that.
you didn't have
The
to
Drinky Zooms, yes.
You didn't have to, but we, you know.
Yeah, but you know, I got to tell you, it kept people sane during those hard times, you know, that there was a group of people that we can talk to and kvetch and just laugh. And I think there was a whole conversation about why aren't monkeys in films anymore? You know, it just happened, you know.
That was later in the evening, I think.
I think
that was after the.
that was
drinking
after,
party.
yeah. But with
Yeah.
that in mind, you know, again, I'm gonna thank my friends here for joining us, and we'd like to open this up for questions, and you could either type your question in the chat box, or if you want to open up your video to say it, please let us know.
And while you're doing that, I want to say that we all come from a time when animation had left television and was turning into a cable thing. So there was Cartoon Network, there was Disney, there was Nickelodeon. But now with streaming, our seasons are shorter, and there's a whole bunch of people at Sony I've never even met.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's a whole bunch
Sure.
of people at you know, Amazon and at Netflix and down at Apple so there are a lot more jobs available, but they're shorter.
Shorter, right.
So
Not to mention
it's
gaming too.
Oh, forget about it. Gaming's awesome. I
Um,
want to do that now.
Tell you what, Grieven, can we, why don't we call on you to ask a question if you have something?
He's eating something so delicious.
I know, it's making me hungry.
Remember,
Yeah.
guys, this is your chance to talk to some amazing folk. All right.
Anybody got crickets?
I think
Grieven?
the cricket has a question.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Genielle, would you like to turn on your chat and audio? There you go.
Yeah, so once again, thank you for having me, and also thank you for being here and sharing all of your wonderful advice. So I wanted to ask, is there anything that you wish you did or that really worked for you at like the start or early parts of your career?
Hmm.
Ugh, business stuff probably, because I wish I had saved money. I didn't really know what was going to happen. I didn't know that I would be laid off, or I didn't know I would need to save money. I just didn't even think about it. I didn't treat it like a business.
Mhm.
Join the union as soon as you can.
Yeah.
Don't work on spec.
Hmm.
Don't work for
Spec.
free.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see a lot of that with people doing commissions online, and yeah, the online thing, doing other people's things. I think that's really good training, because you're learning. People say, hey, draw my characters in your style. So that's a good chance to kind of do what we do in animation. Is I didn't create the Angry Beavers, but I had to draw them. So I had to learn how to draw them the way they're supposed to be drawn, you know.
Mhm. Yeah.
So there's a lot of advantages to that you guys have now with the web and all the online stuff.
For sure.
You know,
Yeah.
additionally, there are online classes all over the place.
YouTube.
Through the union, but I don't know if you have to be a member of the union to see the classes or
You
not.
do.
You do.
I think you
Ugh. Well, there's another reason to join
Women in animation, though, you don't have to be in the union, and women in animation is kind of like a great big collection of
yeah, that's a good source.
non-professional and professional women. There are a lot of students in it, and I've gone to some of the mixers, and I've met a lot of students who are up and coming, and it's an amazing group. I recommend women.
Yeah,
Is that
join that
big?
one.
Is that based in California?
It is based in California, but it is like, they do a lot of Zoom stuff
Oh,
and
okay, cool.
classes and they networking and they do so much.
Good,
Yeah.
good. Okay, awesome, awesome.
And
Um,
everyone can join. It's not just women.
Everyone, men, women,
I joined.
yeah.
So I
And-
have, oh, now there's questions.
Oh, wow.
There they
It's blowing
come.
Oh,
up.
here you go.
Danielle,
Good
did
grief.
we? Oh,
Thanks,
there you go. Okay.
Danielle.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Great
So
question.
Shiley, would you like to join us to ask, or would you like me to ask for you?
Oh, this is a good one.
Yeah. How much of 2D animation is outsourced generally? Oh, there she is. Hello.
I
You already asked, so never mind, I guess. But yeah, I did want to ask because I recently talked to a DreamWorks representative at the career fair, and he did mention that like the 2D animation gets outsourced a lot. So like we were talking about whether it's better to focus on like design, as in character design and stuff, or is it better to focus on animation? So yeah, that is one of my questions.
Well, I'd say because of the way that we do television shows now, storyboard, timing, art direction, send it all overseas to China, to Korea, to India, and then we get it back, and then we fix it based on that model. The big job is storyboarding. Is number one. For that, it's Storyboard Pro. But what we've added recently that Sue and I are doing, when it comes back from overseas, we're working on Harmony shows. So we're looking for animators, actual
We
domestic
already do.
in-house animators. Well,
Really good ones.
for rewrites, for corrections on things, you cut a scene, it's got to hook up. Somebody's got to draw that.
Yeah.
So that animation on Harmony is quickly becoming the new thing.
Yeah, it's big.
Especially with just this one company, with Bento Box. I don't know how they do it at other studios, but within the last 2 years.
Yeah, it's really recent.
It's becoming
And
more.
it's fun. We
Yeah.
actually get to draw what goes on the air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
In terms of design, though, I do think design is always going to be lucrative, though, because we still do, even though we will send production, will go to overseas or Canada now. We still have to provide all the key designs and all the key backgrounds, all the key paint. So we're always designing, and we actually do some of the layout and some, you do more than just the keys. We used to just do keys. Now we do a lot more than we used to. So I think design, paint, that is always going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
I think with the advent of Harmony to Rob's point, and it is coming back. It's like coming full circle. Before, we had animators here, and then everything was shipped overseas, and we became timers or board artists or whatever to adapt. And now that it's becoming accessible here, now the animation is returning back. So again, it's really important to have those skills ahead of time. And I'm thrilled. I'm excited. It's fun.
I know.
Draw again.
Sue and I used to be animators.
Yeah.
And then we started sending things overseas. So we started taking over pre-production stuff, directing, timing, that stuff. So all the pre-production is going to be domestic. The best cartoons are made here, although they do some pretty good stuff in England. I do like Bluey.
I don't know. I think Bardell's pretty good.
I think Bluey's kind of cool. But to work in-house is going to be all pre-production.
Right.
And then the actual animation, unfortunately, it's still financially better, more reasonable to have stuff animated overseas.
Yeah.
But to Carol's point, also it's the foundation has to happen here. That's where everything really has to be nailed down. If you don't have a really solid foundation to send overseas, it's going to be a mess. And believe me, I've dealt with so many messes. It's not funny. And it's like, oh my gosh, what the hey. But, if you do, there's always going to need to be an anchor here. And if you can be, the design department is so integral to have that nailed down. And I can't stress the importance of having a solid design team here.
And Carol, we were talking about this Friday, was when you start up a show, give them everything you can think of.
Mhm.
Do walk cycles.
Yeah.
We do everything. Yeah.
Show them how that bird flies.
Our art directors even do it. They're sitting there doing.
Yeah.
Expressions,
The more information you can get up front, the better.
mouth parts, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's very, very important. I am my main first love is design. So that's my favorite part of everything.
Michael did a thing where I'm going to tell on, we had a show where we had to have a bunch of beavers. I forget, it was for an audience or something like that. It's like, how many more beavers can we draw? And I said, draw the crew. So he did a caricature of everybody on the crew, and we're all like in the thing. I still have mine.
Yeah, I think
We do that on Phineas too.
Yeah, we did it on Phineas.
In Night of the Living Pharmacists, everybody got turned into doofs. It was like instead of zombies, you turned into doof zombies. And we're like, we need to have crowds for Danville. And I was like, let's just have the crew. And everybody on the crew got turned into a zombie, which was, ironic and poetic on so many
It's
levels.
a fun perk, I would say.
Yeah. I always suffered pretty badly with your caricatures, though. Michael.
Yes.
Buck teeth and
So,
a big belly.
This next question comes from Jennifer. Jennifer, would you like to join us, or I ask for you? Because this is a very important question, I think.
Oh, Lord.
Read it.
Here we go.
Well, yeah, I was just wondering, like, what is the lifestyle like of like an animator, like compared to a traditional like 9 to 5?
Mostly cannibalism. There's a lot of
I
cannibalism.
initially read that as the lifespan.
Oh,
Oh, nice.
lifespan.
That's what I thought, but no, lifestyle.
Wow.
It depends on where you work. I mean, when you work at Disney or someplace, you might have just like 9 to 5 job, but it depends if you're working union or non-union. And then, like Rob was saying earlier, we used to freelance all the time too. I don't now at this age, but I used to freelance and do second or third jobs as well. So you can choose how you want to live. You can choose to work many jobs and many hours, or you can choose to just stick with one and be in a union show and have it just kind of be regular and have your vacations and everything.
Well, I will vouch for the animation lifestyle. Having had regular job, I graduated college and I did real jobs. I was a apartment building manager in Chicago, 1,038 units. And I had to wear a tie and I had to be nice to people. And you can't joke with real people. They don't get it. It's like hitting tennis balls into the curtains when you start saying something stupid in front of actual people. But in animation, I sat down at that ink and paint table among my peers and everybody was a goof. And I'm like, here we go. It's the best. Before animation, I shouldn't admit it, but I probably got fired probably twice a year.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
For about 8 years there.
Yeah.
But since animation, nobody's gotten around to firing me. So it's like,
wow, you're lucky.
it's weird.
I think you
It's
get
weird.
fired at least once
Yeah.
in this business.
But whatever.
So-
I mean, that'll happen too. I mean, just you get some jerk that thinks they know everything, and you tell them to go screw themselves once, and they get all mad.
So we had asked Grieven early on, and he missed it. So I know he just asked at the end of the chat, but we're gonna pop him up just because he missed it the first time. So Grieven, I'm sorry if I misspoke your name, but what would your question be?
Well, that's a tough question.
Oh,
I think you're still muted.
I think he's still eating. You could unmute
Oh,
yourself.
there you are.
There he is. Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, hello, aloha from Costa Rica. It's a pleasure to meet you all. I have been wondering something when Robert mentioned that they use Storyboard Pro as beta testers. Well, it's well known that the industry is changing always, and for example, something that we learned last year is different now. So, how has been your experience in this? How do you deal with this?
That's a good question.
Yeah, it was like people say, well, why do you go to college? You go to college to learn how to learn things.
For sure.
You learn on the job.
You learn on the job. They introduce a new program. Do
And
you
gotta
know?
learn it.
Do you know Cubicom?
Yeah, it's like fast.
I'm familiar with it. And then you spend the next 4 days before the job learning Cubicom. You know, like they do that anymore. That's an old program, but we all do it, and there's always enough time. And if you can't do it, here's the problem: you're out.
Yeah, it's
I know some really good storyboard people who can't handle Storyboard Pro anymore. They changed it enough that they can't do it anymore.
And can I say one thing though? I hate learning. It hurts my head.
so true, right?
Don't teach me nothing.
I know.
I mean,
But, you know,
I'm currently an online adjunct for a mass comm program at University of New Haven and Sam Houston State, and one uses Blackboard, one uses Canvas, and constantly trying to figure out how to do the same thing in a completely different platform, because it's like learning a new operating system and all those other kinds of things. You go like, this made good sense to the people who designed this. I don't need it. And but you don't get a choice. It's not really a democracy when it comes to technology. It's like whatever the companies put out there, like what Rob said, you either you learn, you adapt,
Right.
or it becomes very Darwinian very quick.
Well, it used to be that as they made the programs, they would incorporate animation terminology. When I worked at US Animation, they said, yeah, this, I know it's the desktop, but we're going to call it the Platen. I know this is, this is right and left, but we're still going to call it east and west. And all that stuff is gone now. I mean, it was based on the old camera stand stuff. So it evolves. Even the difference between layers and levels from Storyboard Pro to Harmony. It's
Everything.
like, would you just stick with the terminology?
Yeah.
Even the Adobe programs aren't even you can't even use like Illustrator key commands are different from Photoshop key commands, and which are different from, I mean, it's crazy. Even in the same program.
I actually go through and change all the key commands.
Yeah, you can do that.
Same here.
Well, I did that. I did the same key commands on Storyboard Pro that I did on Harmony that I had on Storyboard Pro. And all the passwords and stuff, I just program it into my Cintiq.
I wanted
so it's
to
like, what's your password?
Yeah, ask a lot of questions though, and because if you're getting a job and you are working on a program and you really don't know it that well, but you're saying, yeah, I'm going to do this, and you get in there, you just ask everyone around you and ask everyone questions. One of the things like I've learned, I've never taken a Photoshop class. That's all I work in. That's all I've been working in for years. I've never taken a class, but I know it really well. But like this week, we're going to have a Photoshop tips and tricks get together on Zoom where our whole crew, we have 21 people, we're all going to get together and share our secrets with each other so that we all learn what each other's doing, because they have, some of these youngsters like you guys know everything, so I want to learn, but also they want to learn from me too, so ask lots of questions.
Great.
Command option control, don't forget about that one, Carol. It goes straight to the level you're working on.
Nice. So Sky has a question. Sky, would you like to pop in?
Oh yeah, sure. So what is your favorite thing about animation, and what is your biggest pet peeve?
Can I have the pet peeves?
Oh my
God. Lord, we only have another half hour, Rob.
Rob talk. We'll be here all day.
Sue, what's my biggest pet peeve?
I'm not saying it.
Saturday Night Fever, that pose.
Oh, I thought it was food fights.
No, it's the moonwalk and Saturday Night Fever. They're just like, look, they do a cool dance and it ends like this. It's just like, would you
The people are the best. It's all the people. The people are the best part of this business. It's the only reason why I stay on certain productions.
Yeah.
If I don't like the people, I don't stay at on that show or in that studio.
And I
talk
know
to
who you're
the
talking
people
about too.
every day. We haven't worked together for what, 30 years? No, but it's all the people. Like, you have this incredible crew and you become like a family, like Michael was saying earlier. You really do become family. Like it's pretty incredible. So that's the best for me.
Yeah.
And to what Rob said about fitting in and finding people, that I would say to people, to the writing staff when we were doing Beavers and they were getting disgruntled, I was going like, look, we get paid as well as an emergency room physician, and if we mess up, nobody dies. So so lighten up a little bit. And secondly, if you go into a meeting with animators and you start being a butthead, you do this at your own peril, because there will be a picture passed around the desk of
Yes.
you.
You will be burned in effigy.
And then bad things happening to you. And then the next person will add something to the bad thing. Like, the animal on your head will then do something else. And you'll never see it. Everyone in the room will be laughing and you'll be droning on in some self-important way. So it's an important thing, to just kind of like pace yourself and know that you have a lot of passive aggressives around you.
Yeah, when I was working on the Beavis movie, I was animating on the hallucination sequence.
Oh God, okay.
And it was by Rob Zombie, and I got the scene where the bubbles are turning into demons. Well, there was one particular production manager that did something that they shouldn't have done, pissed
Turned
me
into a
off.
bubble.
So for one frame, every single demon looked like never
So-
piss off an animator, comedian, or musician.
Or Mitch
Exactly.
Shower. Mitch will draw a picture of you.
I would say, I just want to answer more of that question. The worst part is layoffs.
Oh yeah,
Layoffs.
hiatuses.
About 2 months before you're laid off, people, like in my department, there's attrition. People are looking for work, they're panicking,
Yeah.
and they're looking, and they drop what they're doing and they go to other shows, or their production level goes way down.
Yeah.
And then when you're laid off, you don't know how long it's going to be, but you'll get something, but you don't know when, and it's terrifying. And so just being prepared for that. But that is the absolute worst, is the layoff.
I will attest to that, because for myself, I had the during the strike periods when nothing was happening and they stocked up for 3 years and nobody was working. And that's where it's like, save your money, because you never know when that's going to happen or how long it's going to take.
Well,
I'm sorry, keep going.
Well, no, I say that goes to an earlier point that was made about how managing the lifestyle, the professional style of being show business in general, but in animation in particular. I always say to people, you're like a desert animal. And when it's raining, you store up all that water in your tail, and that you hope when the rain stops, that all that water doesn't go away and you're found dead in the ditch.
That's
welcome to animation, kids.
yes.
So you have to, so you have to develop a sense of, if you're making this much money per week, that's not an annuity. That's not something that's granted for the rest of your life. You have to budget things. You have to be your own business manager.
Yeah.
You have to sit down and go like, this is my cash flow. This is how long this is going to last, and then start preparing for the next dry spell. And and just, that's what was that great line from the second Godfather when he said, my friend Mo Green was found dead, shot through the eye. I didn't ask any questions. I said, this is the business we have chosen.
It's kind of cryptic, Keith. What the heck?
On that happy note, we have
Get out while you can, kids. Get out while you can.
Alexandria. Alexandra, would you like to pop in?
Okay. So is there a method of animation you like doing or find useful?
Or
A method?
like what, more specific, like what?
So like kind of like the way you like approach animation. So like what's kind of like your kind of like the way that you kind of like lean into like working on something like that?
Well, we're fortunate enough to have, like at the storyboard stage, we're fortunate enough to have a lot of the dialogue already done. And the easy part is being inspired by the actors. On Angry Beavers, it was so easy because Richard was all over the place. So if you board to the action, the dialogue, if you stick with the voices, they're doing the acting and you're supporting what they're doing, then that works really well.
Yeah, your track is everything for sure.
Yeah, and in Storyboard Pro, you can almost, well, you could animate if you wanted to, but
I did.
you really can nail every move, the anticipations, the overshoots at the right point, that if there's time.
Yeah.
But that's what I always do. I always follow what the actors do because they're the actors, you know.
Yeah. So okay, did that, I think that
If that answers your question, I don't know.
I think it's also specific to each department. You know, everyone, there's a little bit different answer for every single department, you know, and I think a lot of that too is, you know, you find out what it is as it happens. You know, you can never really, you got to gauge when things happen, I think. Wallace, you're next. Would you like to pop in for a second on your question?
Oh, okay. Is there any tips for social networking in a conference? Like what kind of questions that I should or shouldn't ask?
You mean like,
know your audience.
like in a Zoom meeting, or are you talking about social media? Like, oh, wait a minute.
Well, on social media, if you're working on a show, there are certain things you cannot talk. If your show hasn't aired yet, you can't talk about certain things on the show. You have to be very careful. You know, the internet's forever, and be very careful about what you say, how you say it, and about whom it's being said.
Sign NDAs. You have to be very careful.
But honestly, if you're positive about stuff, you can say anything you want, pretty much. If you're not violating any copyright or
you just no details.
no, the gag order we always have before the show is actually aired or even talked about.
And then they'll let you know when you can share information. Like on our show, it's different for every show, but we have to wait, I think 2 weeks or a week or 2 weeks after it airs. And then we also have to post a disclaimer on our work.
Right, in portfolios and stuff.
And it has to have been on air. It can't be something that we threw away or something that they didn't use. It has to be an actual piece from what aired. So
And they're pretty
specific.
hanky about that these days, Sony, because everyone's working at home.
Right.
And it can't be high res. You can't post your high res.
Really? That's interesting.
No, because they could make it into something or steal it. It has to be low res. It has to be.
And if you're working for Disney, they're really, really strict about it.
Right. So we're about to wrap up. Shiley has one more question. But Shiley, if you don't mind, I think I'm gonna read this one out because I think Rob just hit on that. And this is something we've all experienced, especially during the pandemic and working at home and networking remotely. And each one of us has our own experience for that. Briefly, can you talk about how that affected you? You know, were you productive, more productive, less productive? And again, this will be the last question for the session.
I think they get a lot for their money. That's all I can say. Because I start at 7 in the morning and I finish like 8 or 9 at night. All I do is pick up my son and eat during the day. So they get a lot more work than, but I like it because I have kids. So it works out great for me to work from.
Perfect.
I would, throughout the day, I would visit everyone on my crew, walk into their cubicle and talk with them. And, well, so what are you working on? You know, so I could see it. And if they had any questions, they could ask right then, you know, hey, I was thinking about doing this. Yeah. Or if you do, I'll kill you, you know. But I could talk to them individually. And if I want to have just a formal, informal, like, what's up? You know, do you have any questions? You know, if I want to do that, let's have a Zoom. And all of a sudden they feel like they're being called on the carpet. The other thing working remotely is that you have to preface everything. When you send out a group email, hi, how's everyone doing? You can't just get to the point, or you sound like a, you know, like you're gonna fire somebody or something. And it's the same. And I had problems with that working on at another studio, that I'm just kind of flippant with what I say. I don't mean any harm. And for some reason on email, it sounds worse. It sounds threatening.
You do
There's no
have to be
context.
so careful how you're, like, you know, when I'm really stressed out, I'm just very abrupt and fast when I'm texting we use Slack at work, and that's how we do everything. And I'll go back and reread it, and it looks like I'm mad or something, you know, and it's like, oh, I'm just telling someone to do something, and can you do it like this? And it's like, but the way it comes across is not polite. So you have to be so careful how you type and how you come across.
And you're subject to everybody's conversations with the alerts and stuff. You go to draw and it's like, boom, what? Boom, what?
Right.
In the studio, you can focus, you know.
Well,
Except when people are coming in your office just to say hi.
Right.
Yeah. Get
I
out.
mean,
You can close your door in your office. Like,
well, it all points to that difference in communications, where when you're speaking, roughly 50% is your tone of voice, another 20-30% are your gestures, and 15% is the actual verbal content. When you're sending emails, when you're sending, it's all the verbal content.
You make a really good point, Keith. I think you know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
It's just great.
But it's to that point, which is when you're doing emails and you're doing text and all of that, you become a writer, and you have to sit down and write and rewrite. And I mean, I'll look at emails for a long time because that's my habit as a writer, but you look at it and go like, no, wait, that's not the right way to say it. That goes before this. And so it takes more time when you're working remotely to communicate with people, because you don't have that shorthand that you do, like you say, when you pop into somebody's cubicle and go like, how the heck are you?
Right.
Well, additionally, in the writer's room, there's an informality that it's understood that you can say certain things in the writer's room that you don't go up and just say to.
no.
Well, that's not true anymore.
Well,
Yeah, well,
it is, but the problem is the writer's rooms now are recorded. So that's, somebody can take that out of context. They can take it. They can put it on social media. And all of a sudden
I spend time with human resources based on somebody walking by the writer's room and hearing something being said that was just.
But you got to be able to, when you're being funny, you got to be able to throw some stuff out there that.
So from a woman's point of view, I'm just going to comment on this because I do like that things are changing. So I know you're complaining about it, and I'm from the same.
I'm not complaining about it.
But I do like that things have changed a bit, where there are more sensitivities to what's being said, even in the writer's room. Although I work on Rick and Morty, so again, not the same on my show.
Everything comes with a disqualifier right off the bat.
I think our writing is already so over the top that you're in trouble if you're offended.
Well, I think the thing is with writing comedy, you can't go right up to the correct point. And if you see that as an absolute, you're always stopping short and you're turning in tepid material. So you have to have a trust tree, a safe place where you can go too far, and then everybody gets a laugh and says like, and we can't do that. And and you pull back from that to get to the point where, okay, we got some pretty funny stuff, without necessarily being racist or misogynistic or anything like that, just to be able to say certain outrageous things. And I will say this from experience, having been in a room where somebody took offense very, very easily. that's a buzzkill. That takes the whole creative process and goes right down the tube, because then unlike what people would think of comedy writers, you have like a sensitivity. You don't really want to offend people. And so if you see that you're offending them, you pull back.
Mhm.
Right? You don't want to be a butthead.
Right.
You go like, oh, I went too far, and
Yeah.
and so then
But-
That's the thing. It's like you can do this in person. And
This is
Keith,
coming from two men. So
Keith is right.
again, I'm just going to repeat myself.
No, Keith,
And I am direct about this. I'm a female in this business, and I'm just going to say
Right.
no. And I'm glad that it's changing. So
Yes. I am
Right
too.
on, Carol.
Sue,
right on, sister.
I'm going to give Sue the last word here. Sue,
Oh,
on
great.
remote working, how has that affected you?
How has it affected me? I have to be, there's good points and there's bad points. I do like the fact that I can just get up and, I have my coffee and I start working and I can do what I need to do. But I also hate the fact that I get up, I start working, and that's all I do. So, it's a double-edged sword. And again, like Carol, it's like they are getting their money, and it's a constant struggle. And I have to be very, very conscious to take breaks. I have to be very, very conscious not to spend the entire day, because one thing I love about animation is that you time warp. You get in your head about something and you're working on something, and it's like, why is my stomach growling? Why is my head hurting? And oh, I've been at this for 6 hours straight and I haven't looked up. It happens. And I love that about it. It's just this weird, wonderful thing.
Yeah.
But it's also dangerous. So I have to make a conscious effort. It's like, okay, let me go outside and get my mail and water the plants and see some sunshine and talk to people. And, and then I can go back and be a hermit again. So there's definitely good things and bad things. One thing I do miss about the studio is that there's a palpable energy. You have to be a special kind of person to go into animation. Nobody in their right mind works on stuff to such a minute degree, frame by frame. You got to be a special weirdo to do that. And I love these special weirdos. I'm one of them. And to do that when you're all together, there's this great energy. And you just feed off of it. When we actually do get together, it's so much fun. We are a bunch of goofballs, and it's great, but it's also nice to be too. So I'm going to be on both sides.
Yeah, I like the special weirdo, because I think that applies to a lot of us. I know it applies to all of our panelists for sure. And
What do you mean by that?
I don't know. But again, we're gonna start wrapping things. We're gonna wrap things up. I want to thank you all. I know we have somebody asked about social networks, so if perhaps later on you can send me your social media if you're interested in sending that, and we'll share that out to everybody in case anybody has any questions afterwards. But this has been great. A lot of information, and I always think it's special when somebody. I think it's amazing when somebody is able to share this much information with them. And I want to thank you for joining us. And I want to thank our audience here and their questions. And any more questions later on, just feel free to text me or email me, I should say, and we'll see if we can handle things for you guys. Okay. So
Great questions, guys.
yeah, great questions. Thank you, Michael.
yeah,
Keep
no,
drawing.
thank you.
Yeah.
Keep drawing.
Keep drawing.
right.
You too, Sue.
Yeah. I'm going.
Back to work, Sue.
Okay.
And
So Sarah-
as someone once told me, it only takes one yes. Just
Exactly.
remember that you're going to face some rejection along the way, and you're going to write or draw a whole bunch of stuff that that you're going to be Willy Loman with your little sample case going around, and but that one yes, like winning the lotto, and that's kind of what you got to focus on.
Exactly. I agree. Well, thank you so much again. And we are going to be sharing this online. So if you're watching this online already, it's online. But for everyone here, it will be online. And just a reminder, we are now accepting submissions for our fall showcase in October. You could enter your films at Film Freeway or go to our website, caffest.com for more information. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you soon.